Conflicts aren't static, they are continuously evolving and changing as parties within the conflict adjust and the conflict itself escalates. Consider this dynamic conflict life cycle. We can assume the conflict starts in this latent stage, meaning there might be some underlying tensions, but parties either haven't become fully aware of these issues or they have yet to take any intentional action to deal with issues or come into conflict. It's thought that preconditions for conflict, the conflicting interest must be present before the conflict emerges. According to this model, it's usually a triggering event that conflict transforms from latent to emerging. If we consider the issues around the George Floyd conflict, we can understand it as a latent conflict that always existed between parts of the African American community and the local police forces. But it was the shooting of George Floyd that was the trigger event for the manifestation of that conflict, where people began to engage in those observable intentional actions to achieve their goals. We see that once conflict emerges, it doesn't stay at that level. Instead, it tends to escalate further. We'll explore this a bit more when we talk about conflict escalation in the next stage. We'll often then see that conflict escalates until it reaches the stage known as the hurting stalemate. Now, this is a point in time when both parties have activated either all the resources they have, or all of the resources they're willing to invest in the conflict, but neither are prevailing over the other and both are starting to really count the costs of being in the dispute. It's that stage where both parties tend to be equally strong, but there's nothing more they are willing to throw into conflict and there's no sign of resolution. At this point in the hurting stalemate, either due to the depletion of resources or parties becoming increasingly cognizant of the costs of conflict, we enter this space of de-escalation. This de-escalation, sometimes with the help of an intervening party or because the parties don't want to go on the same way. This is where we start to see negotiations between parties and maybe in later stages possibilities of settlement or resolution. After that, we might see peace building post-conflict. That's the conflict life cycle that we often see. To recap, because it's an important model for us to consider when we're analyzing conflict. During latent conflict, people have different needs, values or interests, but they might not be aware of it or acting on it, or the differences between people aren't great enough to cause one side to begin that conflict. A triggering event, which leads to the manifestation or emergence of obvious conflict. This is followed by escalation of the conflict till a stalemate where the situation is neither side can win based on their capacity for what they are investing now and both sides investing as much as they are willing to. Then de-escalation, where a temporary or part of a broader trend towards settlement or resolution. It's at that point of the de-escalation that presents an ideal opportunity for intervention, negotiation, and settlement. When an agreement is reached post-conflict, peace-building efforts begin to repair damaged relationships with the long term, creating more resilient or robust relationships.